We're at the Redevelopment Commission meeting for February 18th, 2025, and looking forward to getting started. Can we start the meeting with a roll call, please?
Randy Cassidy, present.
Sue Scambolari here.
John West here.
And Deborah Meyerson here, and checking if Lori McRobbie is online. And if not, she'll let us know if she checks in. And staff present, please.
Anna Killian Hansen, Housing and Neighborhood Development.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Tammy Caswell, the Neighborhood Development Department.
Thank you very much. And on our agenda, we have the minutes from February 3rd, 2025. Any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. And again, Gillis, let me know if we do a roll call vote because Lori is online. Otherwise, we're just
She just dropped on.
Okay, so we will do a roll call vote with Lori online. Let's do our roll call, please.
Yeah. Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sue Scambolari, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes. And can I ask that someone turn my video on? I can't apparently turn it off. Oh, no, I did. Never mind.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, we've got our roll. Deborah Meyerson, yes. That passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is our examination of claims for February 14th, 2025. Any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I've got a question. Can we look at page 404, item number 13074, Renaissance? I see that's a, I guess we're closing out that contract and paying out the retainage, is that correct?
I don't know anything about that claim. That probably would have been somebody in engineering. Anybody in the control office here? Hold on.
And Jessica is also out of town right now, but that is what that claim is for. It's for the closeout of it had a retainer associated with that particular contract. And so that now that the work is done, that is the closeout on it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so there's been a final inspection and somebody's signed off on it and we're good to go?
We will have to talk to engineering about what the level of their inspection is, but that would be the practice.
Yeah. So just to clarify and make sure in regards to it, we don't, as the redevelopment signing off on this particular claim for the retainage, we're not sure if engineer has signed off on it or we need to make it subject to engineer's final inspection. Because that was a question I had on this one too, because it's been
I don't believe that they're able to submit those claims without the inspection. And I think Mary Krupinski from JS Held is with us as well. And Christina, could you make her a co-host so that she can unmute or ask her to unmute?
Sure, just a second. Okay.
Great, thank you. Yes, I can answer that. Roy Aitchen has been involved from engineering on that project, and the work has been complete for some time, and so I believe we came with the last pay app last month, and then this would be a retainage to close that out.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I will entertain a motion, please.
I'll move approval of claims register for February 14th, 2025.
Second.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sue Scambolari, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have our examination of payroll registers for February 7th, 2025. Any comments or questions from commissioners on this item? If not, I will entertain a motion, please.
Move approval of payroll registers for February 7th, 2025.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Randy Casty, yes.
Sue Scambolery, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we've got reports of officers. Is there a director's report?
There is no director's report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Legal, do we have someone from legal online?
Right here.
Or, sorry.
Yeah. Let's say Margie's online.
Okay. Any report from council, please?
She said
Okay, sorry. I see the transcription said she said no. I didn't hear her say no. So, okay. Is there, and I heard that Jessica McClellan is on vacation, business development update? Okay, thank you. And I know Mary Kropinski is online. Anything from Hopewell, please?
Yes, just confirming that we received 5 responses to Hopewell East. We would like to bring those to you in an executive session, which I believe is being arranged for March 3rd. We would have you 3 advisors there at that meeting as well, and we'd be bringing recommendations on South as well as a review of what we've received on East.
Well, we'll look forward to that on March 3rd. Anything else you'd like to report on at this time, please?
No, the team's working really well to get bits and pieces done here and there and everywhere. And we're onboarding Anna Dragovich very rapidly. So appreciate it. Any questions?
I just want to get a clarification, Mary, in regards to it. The March 3rd executive session, the intention is to bring recommendations for Hopewell South and then the review of Hopewell East of those 5.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One comment to that. Can we be sure to allow enough time to do that?
Due diligence.
We usually try to cram it in an hour, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. So this looks like it's going to be a lot of material. I would hope we would allow enough time for it.
We plan on starting at 3:30 that day, and we're sending out calendar invites now to see if that will work for the commissioners. We will adjust our meeting time for the RDC as needed, though if we feel like nobody can come at 3:30.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Sue, did you have something you wanted to add?
nope, she answered it. just
Okay,
now.
great. Okay, well, thank you for the Hopewell update. Do we have anybody Trades District today? Just check in. Okay, okay, we will move on to our items of business. We have Resolution 25-31, approval of a quitclaim deed to consolidate Switchyard Park parcel into ownership. Who would like to speak to that?
Good evening, Commissioners. Lovely to be here with you tonight. A little different setting than I'm used to with you, but my name is Tim Street. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Bloomington. I'm here tonight to ask for approval of 2 quitclaim deeds related to Switchyard Park, and I'll just explain why here. We, believe it or not, are still closing out items from the construction of Switchyard Park, and one of those items is that we need to record an environmental restrictive covenant on the parcels in which coal ash and cinders were sequestered per IDEM. So while we were working on that this past year, we encountered a lot of obstacles with doing that, with the way the parcels of Switchyard Park were laid out, and determined that it would be much easier and better long-term if we consolidated those parcels 2 of the parcels that comprise Switchyard Park currently are still owned by the Redevelopment Commission. So it somewhat makes sense to transfer those over to the Board of Park Commissioners anyway, so they are off the RDC's roll. There was a diagram that I believe was included with the packet that shows the parcels in question. So what will happen is these will be consolidated under the Board of Park Commissioners, as well as the parcels that were just labeled City of Bloomington. I have already secured approval from the Board of Public Works to transfer those over. And this will become one large parcel onto which we can record the necessary restrictive covenant with the state.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners on this resolution?
So Tim, am I to assume that all these other parcels that are labeled here, they're already owned by parks?
Correct. If you're looking at the diagram, 1, 6, and 8 were already in the name of the Board of Park Commissioners. 2, 4, and 5 were under the name City of Bloomington, and 3 and 7 were under the Redevelopment Commission.
I get it.
Quick question, Tim, in regards to, from the financial standpoint on redevelopment, is there any encumbrances that the Redevelopment Commission still has on any of these parcels?
I am not aware of any, no.
So, okay.
If there are no further comments or questions from commissioners, I'll see if there's any public comment. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Move approval of Resolution 2531.
Second.
We've got a first and a second for Resolution 2531. Do a roll call vote, please.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sue Scambaluri, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. Motion passes unanimously for 25-31. Thank you. Next on our agenda is 25-32, approval of transfer of management of Hopewell Commons to the City of Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners. I assume Mr. Street will talk to us about that as well.
I am with you once again. So of a similar flavor to the last report, but a little bit different, is while we were working on this, we realized this would be a timely meeting in which to bring a resolution basically just authorizing the Board of Park Commissioners to carry on the work of Hopewell Commons past construction, similar to how Switchyard was built and then turned over to the Board of Park Commissioners and hence my department to manage. This resolution basically just states that the 2 parcels that actually comprise the park, which are the ones immediately on the northwest side of the University and Madison intersection and on the northeast side, will be dedicated over to the Board of Park Commissioners to maintain, especially and as soon as once Milestone reaches final completion, the responsibility for all aspects of maintaining and keeping up the park will come to the Parks Department. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners on Resolution 2532?
Yeah, I've just got a point of clarification. The way the resolution's written, it's describing each parcel with a parcel number, which is fine. But then if you try to identify those parcels in the attachment, you don't know which one is 6 and which one's 2. So you might want to revise the resolution to tie those together.
To tie them to the lot numbers on the plat?
Yes.
Okay. That might be a legal question, but I'm sure we could potentially tie that together. I do know those parcel numbers are accurate for what is recorded with the recorder right now because we pulled those from the system.
I don't doubt that. It's just that then you refer to the plat and you don't have any identification.
Sure, that's a great point.
One quick question, Tim, in regards to the infrastructure improvements that was contracted through the redevelopment to Milestone. With the engineering department has to release those accordingly. Does it create any issues if we have already went ahead and done a resolution for a deed transfer from a contractual standpoint?
No, I don't think so, and we're not I don't have quitclaim deeds before you tonight for this. This is basically authorizing the Parks Department to take these. I anticipate bringing the actual quitclaim deeds for these in the future at some point. The resolution is written that says once the contractor reaches final completion, the Parks Department is responsible. So this is basically, I think, covering any gaps that we might have otherwise, in which there would be a question of, is it the RDC's responsibility? Is it the Parks Department's responsibility? Once they are done, it is the Parks Department's responsibility, and then we will transfer the parcels accordingly at a later date.
And from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, the continuation and finishing of the contract will be based through the redevelopment, and then once that's
Correct.
accepted, then the
Still
Parks
through
Department.
engineering, correct. And I have basically worked alongside Roy for some months here. He's been the overall project manager, which has been a blessing, and have been able to work alongside with him to make sure the parks portion is coming along successfully, and he's managing punch list, final completion, all of that for the upcoming weeks.
Okay. And as we move forward on the redevelopment of this, there'll be delineated areas, because as we move forward on the redevelopment of, Hopewell East and Hopewell South, that we don't encroach and create any damage to what's then been transferred to the parks.
Correct. Yeah, and I don't worry too much about that. I think all of the lots around the park have good access from other sides as well, so I don't anticipate that there would have to be much disturbance to the park to build.
Yeah, just don't want to have that headbutting that could occur in regards to it, because we've got a wonderful place there.
Definitely.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I wanted a clarification from Commissioner West. Did you want to propose an amendment based on your question?
I'll defer to the attorney in the room. It just seems to me if you're going to use it as an exhibit, that it probably ought to be identifiable.
You could probably amend it to tell me to use a parenthetical after each of the legal numbers.
Perfect.
There has some lot description, and you could say lot 7A, lot 7B. You could add that after each of those legal descriptions, so that it matches the plat map.
Yeah.
That'd be okay.
Yeah, it works for me.
Accept the motion with an amendment to add the first resolution.
Then I'll go ahead and make a, with that revision in mind, I will move for approval for Resolution 25-32.
Sorry, just one moment before we take the motion. I wanted to,
Oh, public comment.
yeah, just to give that opportunity. Is there any further questions from commissioners? I wasn't sure if Commissioner McRobbie, do you have something that you wanted to add? Okay. So any public comment, either online, I don't see in person. Okay, let's head to the motion then. Thank you.
I guess I'll repeat that. With the revision just discussed with legal counsel, I move for approval of Resolution 25-32.
Second?
We've got a first and a second. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sue Scamballuri, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. Motion passes unanimously for Resolution 25-32. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Street. Next on our agenda is Resolution 25-33, approval of the First Amendment to the Certified Technology Park Agreement. And we have comment on that, please.
Hi, Jane Cooper-Smith, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development. I'd like to present on Resolution 2533, which is, as you stated, the First Amendment to the Certified Tech Park Agreement with the state of Indiana. The initial agreement was entered into 2005, and this agreement, in broad strokes, it established the tech park, and it agreed to fund it up to a certain level, or sorry, at that time it didn't cap the amount, but it agreed to fund it in order that Bloomington would be able to devote resources to developing a tech park. At that time, the city began making plans for the acquisition of property and kind of organizing itself around the idea of a tech park. The tech park is technically larger than the trades district. This agreement has been in place since 2005. In 2015, there was a lifetime cap of funding that the state put into place. So there was a lifetime cap of $5 million, at which point, like when a recipient in the CTP program received that amount, that was supposed to be the end of the road. Our CTP has been really successful. These haven't been universally successful across the state, but this one has done really well. So we reached our lifetime cap in between 2019 and 2022. My notes are a little unclear, but I think we hit it closer to 2019. And we use those funds primarily to fund the renovation of the Dimension Mill. And since that time, we've had small amounts coming in from the CTP fund, from what I understand. And then this agreement is great because it establishes, it extends that initial 2005 document, and it establishes an annual funding amount of $250,000 through June 30, 2027, which is the end of that reporting period. I think that's all I need to say right now. What questions would you have?
Thank you very much, Ms. Coopersmith. Any questions or comments from commissioners on Resolution 25-33?
I'm not clear where those funds come from.
With the state of Indiana.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah, they're not local dollars. I mean, they're receiving them inadvertently from us, but from us across the state. They're not Bloomington dollars going to the state and coming back to Bloomington. They're state dollars coming to Bloomington.
It's not, don't let me jump in, but they're not, it's not property tax dollars that's captured in the TIF. It's payroll dollars that are captured through the state payroll and then coming back?
They're funding in larger chunks than that. So it's not even, we have to hit certain performance metrics, which we do annually through our compliance reporting, demonstrating the activity in the trades district, but it's not even a percentage. There are lump sum payments that come to the trades district through the program.
Okay. As we commit these funds and we're committing $250,000 annually, is that a situation where, because of the time frame, the redevelopment in the city of Bloomington is committed to doing this irregardless if something changes with the state funding mechanism?
We're agreeing to renew the tech park in order that we could receive this funding annually.
Okay.
And I guess I need to get familiar with if we were trying to abandon our activity in the tech park, what that would require, if there are clawbacks for that.
Well,
I'm sure it's in their agreement.
yeah. And my primary concern in regards to this discussion is, with the uncertainty of funds coming from federal and state at this present moment, nobody really, you guys may know, but, the general public is always concerned in regards to it, are these funds consistently going to be available at the $250,000 a year amount?
Right, and that's why we want to sign the agreement, just to, they won't be available if we don't commit to the program. I guess we just can't speak to what the IEDC might decide to do in future, but this has been a really successful program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here.
And
Sorry, I'm just looking for the.
Yeah. I have no issue with recertifying in any capacity. I just want to make sure as one of the members of the Redevelopment Commission, that if we're committing funds that are being funneled through, that we're not making a commitment that will have to come out of some other TIF funding if these funds dry up.
Yeah, so this is my understanding of it, and under Section 6 in their agreement, they call it the Certified Technology Park Incremental Tax Financing Fund, but it's not from a local TIF, but it acts that way.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I understand it's not coming from a local TIF. I just want to make sure as we enter into these things that as one of the members of the commission, we're not encumbering our group to funds that may not be accessible as a pass-through.
Right, I understand.
So that's the only concern I have. And if you guys,
Is there anything like an exit clause that ever comes up for something like this because it's coming from a source that is not locally controlled? and point that direction towards
Yeah.
legal.
I'm just looking in here.
Hey, Randy?
Yes, sir.
I think your point's kind of well taken under today's environment. If you look at the resolution, towards the bottom, item number 2, maybe that language could be strengthened. So it says commits additional funding from IEDC, but what it really should say is commits additional funding only if it's provided by IEDC.
Yeah.
If that's really a concern.
Yeah. That's just,
Or commit any funding received from IEDC, because we can't, I mean, it's, in other words, if IEDC provides that funding, then we commit to putting it into the tech part. That's sort of how I read number 2.
Yeah, you could use up to language in case it doesn't come to 250.
That as well.
So I'm going to ask this question toward legal. If council can advise on wording that would address the concerns being discussed by the commissioners.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Hey, Deborah.
So you're looking at the last paragraph of the second resolution, the resolution right on the next item, in section 3, where it says the redevelopment commission authorizes the expenditures. Is that correct?
Just trying to organize the conversation here. We've got council at the podium, and then Mr. Fernandez, but council was up first, so we'll recognize Mr. Fernandez after. Is that acceptable in terms of what we're trying to manage here? Or?
He can speak first if you'd like to make a suggestion. That would be fine.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez, would you like to weigh in on this before we get further advice from council?
Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple of things. Based on the questions from some of the other commissioners, the source of the funding are gross retail taxes. So this wouldn't have any impact. The future of the program doesn't really have any impact on your TIF, because the TIF funds that the RDC controls are from incremental property taxes, not retail taxes, gross retail taxes. So I understand that the rationale and the concern, but those are not funds that you would be getting but for the Certified Tech Park program. And while I certainly don't want to predict what the legislature will do, I can tell you that there's legislation to actually increase the funding, not repeal it. So while I appreciate the cautionary notes that are being sent here, I think this program's in pretty good position for actually not just getting extended, but increasing for the benefit of Bloomington and other communities that have well-functioning certified tech parks.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. I don't know exactly when you logged in. I just wanted to clarify that the source of the funding was definitely discussed. It was mostly just making sure the RDC was not becoming a payer of last resort if state funding, for some reason, for whatever reason, were to be withdrawn, so that if there were expenses or obligations that were committed under this resolution, that the RDC would not be on the hook, essentially, for the funds being committed, even though they're understood they're from the state and not related to local funding sources. That's my paraphrase of the discussion.
That would be correct from my standpoint.
Okay, so that's where we stand, and I think I would still appreciate hearing from council if there's some recommended wording that we could amend this resolution with to clarify that point.
I'd like to take a minute to look at that before I respond to that question.
Okay. And how about we could put this last on the agenda and return to it? And if there's a way we can move forward with it, we will. And if not, we can discuss what we'd like to do at that time.
One more question before we leave this.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think this would go to Ms. Coopersmith, but A more general question, you mentioned that the Certified Tech Park and the Trades District are not the same thing. They don't perfectly overlap. If I recall correctly, the Trades District is contained within the CTP.
That's correct.
Is there additional documentation, or are there any actions that this body needs to take to protect our interests in the Trades District as well?
Regarding the application of the CTP funds, for example, is the state going to show up and say you haven't deployed enough of this and other? Mr. Fernandez can weigh in. I don't think that's a risk, in part because a lot of the areas surrounding the Trades District, so the CTP areas surrounding the Trades District go north.
So I would assume that would cover the
west,
Trades District.
and those are largely residential, with the exception of some areas on 11th Street. So I think it makes sense. The reason we set the Trades District footprint to be a little bit narrower. I don't think there's a risk.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners on this resolution before we table it and return to it at the end of the agenda? Okay, thank you. So that said, we're going to turn to Resolution 25-34, which is an approval of the First Amendment to the partnership agreement with the Dimension Mill Incorporated. And Ms. Cooper-Smith, I'm assuming you're going to speak to that as well.
Sure. I'll tee this up, and then I'll pass to Mr. Fernandez for additional context if necessary. The city expanded its relationship with the mill. Traditionally, the mill has been a recipient of funding for grant making, and then obviously the city invested heavily in the renovation of the mill and the establishment of the mill as the heart of innovation in Bloomington. But the agreement that was approved in 2023 under Resolution 2305 expanded that relationship to include management of the Trades District. And this was done for a number of reasons, but primarily because city staff didn't have the capacity to do the targeted, detailed, and consistent work that it would take to foster development at the Trades District. So we signed a partnership agreement. That partnership agreement set terms for 2 years with the ability to extend it an additional year, provided parties would come to agreement. So we're proposing Resolution 2534 as an extension of that initial 2-year window. But we've formalized it in a resolution because we do want to commit additional funding to this work. And this is in part or largely because we know that the mill has been doing a great job developing this. They've had a lot of wins this year, including getting the Forge, the EDA grant, the Forge built on time. John says under budget. I don't know if that's still a statement of fact. He'll tell us momentarily. And then securing or helping secure the $16 million Lilly CCC grant. So they're doing great work. They're operating at a loss with this part of their program, and we want to commit to this partnership longer term, and we want to make sure that they're compensated at the level that they need to be for it. So this funding amount is conveniently $250,000 through the term of the agreement annually. It can be funded through the CTP. That's what we cite as a primary source, but the agreement leaves it open so that we can use additional funds as well. Let me make sure that I'm stating that. That's what was intended. And then, Mr. Fernandez, I'll pass to you if you want to say anything else.
I won't say a lot in the interest of time. I'll just say that the original agreement was a 3-year agreement, but Mayor Hamilton felt that he only wanted to commit to the first 2 years of funding so that the Nets administration would have an opportunity to address this. And so the agreement expires at the end of this year, but there's no funding unless you all approve the funding for this amendment. We really appreciate the city's support. Hopefully we're delivering on the expectations for moving the redevelopment of the Trades District forward. And as far as this week, the Forge is on time and on budget. There's still a couple punch list items that we're working through, but we're just about cleaned up on everything. We've got some, first couple of tenants. We've got a third one that we'll be bringing to the Redevelopment Commission probably within the next month. So feeling pretty good about the direction of travel here. Happy to answer any questions, but we really appreciate the Redevelopment Commission's support for this agreement. There is a, if I could, I mentioned this to Jane, there is I believe a need for a slight amendment if the commission's going to approve this. In the last section of the agreement, looking at section 3, the very last sentence refers to when the quarterly payment agreement begins. It should read January 1, 2025, not January 1, 2026. So if the commission approves this, I hope you will also make an amendment to correct that typo. I'm sorry, it's it's section 2, section 3. It's the very last sentence.
Okay.
Yes, the agreement.
Yeah, there are,
Say the resolution or the agreement runs until the end of this year? Aren't we working
It
on?
does, but the funding only was for the first 2 years. So if you read the resolution and the agreement, it speaks to funding for years 3, 4, 5, and I believe 6. So this is year 3.
so there are, just to make it crystal clear what changes need to be made. So it's numbered 2, section 3. Funding is amended to read, and at the end of that paragraph, it should say, annually on January 1, 2025, and for 3 subsequent years.
Yeah.
So the initial agreement was a 2-year term with a renewable 1 year. Instead, we've taken that 1 year and scooped it under this resolution and new agreement that will take us through the end of the first year of the next mayoral term.
That's right.
Yes.
Agreement, what's the final dollar amount that we're going to pay
This is $250,000 for 4 additional years.
for additional 3 or 4 years?
4,
So $1 million
yes.
in a 4-year period, $250,000 a year coming through the redevelopment from the CTP.
So this may be funded by the CTP, it may be funded by other sources. And we have a clawback, we may terminate the agreement.
Okay, we being the city.
Yes,
Okay. And the provisions are in here for that.
yes, and I can pull that language if that's helpful.
Other questions from commissioners on this?
I don't, CTP fund keeps coming up, but I'm not sure I understand the source of that, nor do I understand what the balance is.
The CTP fund, and maybe Anna can speak to this, it's a standalone fund, but it is, and it has been used just for the tech park. So I believe it has $34,000 remaining in it at this time. So not enough to fund an entire new round of this agreement. But the way so just backing the frame up, I think it would be relevant to separate the two things. So the CTP fund, that there is also an agreement for that would allow us to receive $250,000 times 4 years from the state of Indiana. Ideally, we would deploy those funds to this mill partnership agreement, However, the mill partnership agreement stands alone. It specifies the CTP fund as the primary funding source, and it does say, you know, it allows wiggle room there or other funding sources, and it allows us to terminate the agreement. So I think they do belong together. I think it's great that we have received this recertification of the tech park and this additional funding commitment. But I don't necessarily think that has to restrict the partnership agreement.
But does this agreement relate to the last resolution that we have not voted on yet?
The funds that we would be allowed to receive by the signing of the previous resolution, we would use those to fund this agreement. That would be the primary source.
Well, where we're headed and I may be off base here because I really didn't understand any of this.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not saying, yeah, I agree with that. I'm
Yeah,
just
I know.
affirming.
Yes, you did.
No.
So where we're headed with the last resolution is to potentially modify some language that makes it clear that it comes from the IEDC and not from any other RDC sources, which that's different than this?
Yeah.
Because this resolution says it could come out of some other pot that we
Yeah, here, let me pull up
find
the,
appropriate. But we're still talking about 250,000, so
I'm going to quick tag on to that, which is, if that is the case, because that was my understanding, that 25-33 and 25-34 are talking about the same source of funding. My question as a tag on is, Resolution 25-33 extends the funding commitment through June 30th, 2027. But 25-34 is a 4-year agreement that takes it through 2028. So apparently there's 3 years of commitment from the state, and that 4th year becomes then de facto RDC, or obviously we don't, or we just don't know.
We have not been paid for 2024 yet, so we haven't received those 2020. It's just a 6-month shift in the reporting years. So our cycle started June 30, 2024. And the signing of this agreement allows us to receive those 2024, 5, 6, and 7, which will be year 4.
Right, but my tag-on question is about 25-34 talks about funding commitment through 2028. Right?
Yes, and we are also working with IEDC on a back payment from 2022 to settle up with that. But we don't have information available about that at this time. I would also point to the final whereas clause in the 25-34 says, whereas the commission has, maybe present tense shouldn't be used, but whereas the commission has available funds in the CTP fund and other available funds as needed to pay for its obligation under the partnership agreement. When I talked to the controller about this, her thinking was that we could fund the agreement and backfill I think it's the 444 account, Anna, when we receive the CTP funds.
I understand there may be a cash flow way of dealing with this, and I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to clearly designate that. I'm getting back to the earlier discussion from 24-33, which was not putting the RDC on the hook unnecessarily for expenses that would be paid for by the state. And again, I'm not in a position to wordsmith this, and I certainly understand the concept of what you're talking about.
Okay.
But I don't feel like that's clear enough in the current resolution to be able to address that.
I agree. And actually, Ms. Holmes and I had talked about these 2 bullet points. Now, therefore, be it resolved. Extends the agreement to June 30, 2027. This is for the CTP agreement. That's clear. Commits additional funding from IEDC. The word commits is a little confusing. IEDC is the one committing the funding, and so it's difficult for us to say they're committing it in our resolution, but we're really observing that they have committed it.
Can I Jane, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I think the reason that language is in there is that's part of the certified tech park application. You are committing to using these funds as prescribed in the state law. There are certain purposes for which these funds can be used. It's not like a general fund. They have to be specifically used for the purposes that are articulated in the legislation. So when you're committing to the funds, you're committing to spending them in accordance with the law that creates this program.
And I agree, and I think that's perfectly fine. But I think the question is what happens if those funds are not available from the state, and I see these two resolutions contradicting each other.
I'm wondering if we could propose an amendment where the two timelines, as stated in each resolution, are contemporaneous with each other, because that's the confusing part now. And I understand the cash flow issue, but I would suggest that needs to come back to the RDC as another resolution when that funding is available, or to request to use 444 funds, and that might be not till 2028, because again, but anyway, I just think that it's really important and helpful that we actually paused on 25-33 because of exactly the relationship that Commissioner West was just commenting on. Anyway, so that's my suggestion, that there be an amendment to make the two timelines for both of these paired amendments aligned, so that one, RDC is basically a pass-through for the CTP funds, and not extending an obligation that exceeds the amendment for the CTP funds.
Thank you for that. I think that's really reasonable. I also would like to request, or I don't know if I want to request or just observe, there is some, I think, time pressure in signing the CTP agreement. We have a new administration in the State House. We want to accept these terms. We don't have the power to shift the time frame on the CTP agreement. That's assigned to us. And so then the CTP agreement, if we're trying to align the timelines, then it's the one that sets the timeline. And so the CTP agreement is the RDC acknowledging the state's commitment to that funding, and then the city's commitment to deploying that funding in the ways dictated by that agreement. And I feel very confident that we should formalize that agreement. I don't think it's up to you to decide. I don't want to editorialize too much, but we have successfully operated under this relationship. They have exceeded their commitments to us already to date, and it will allow us to move forward and solidify the 25-34 then.
My comment, just to clarify, and then I want to make sure other commissioners have a chance too, is just that I was talking about 25-34, that timeline, which exceeds the timeline of the CTP amendment agreement. That's the one that's local anyway.
Yes.
That it would make sense to make that timeline fit with the state-aligned one for 25-33. So just, it wasn't so much changing something of how IEDC is doing it. It's more just not having a 4-year agreement if we've only know 3 years of funding is likely to be available. So anyway, that's my understanding of the situation, but I welcome other commissioners to weigh in or clarify their thoughts on that.
Margie Rice has her hand raised.
Okay.
May I speak to this issue?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Margie Rice, Corporation Counsel. I think that the RDC has a legitimate concern, and that it should be articulated in the motion that is made for the agenda item that you sort of put on hold, that the RDC's approval is made contingent upon the funding being made available through either the gross sales tax or other outside funding, and that the RDC is specifically not committing tax increment funding or other local funding as a source of the funding. That
sounds perfect in terms of what I understand the commissioners were concerned about. And so, again, we're kind of talking about both resolutions because it's technically Resolution 25-34 that's being discussed now, while council, both in person and virtual, are here, just to return to the possibility of, given the language that Ms. Rice has given us, considering an amendment to 25-34 that would align the timeline for the spending so that it is contemporaneous with the CTP funding.
Yeah, and I also think if it is a cash flow issue, to address Jane's concern, I hear Jane's concern and I agree with her. I think that the controller could certainly front funds and then be reimbursed when the other gross sales tax comes in. And I also hear John Fernandez's comments. The kinds of funding that are being proposed to be cut are not these funds. I mean, economic development is a priority, and I don't see that slowing down. But I do think that it should be made very clear in this record that the RDC is not committing local funding or TIF funding towards this, and that its approval is contingent upon the other outside funds being made available to support this program.
I just want to observe for the commissioners, then there are, I think, two, so you're talking about language in the motion, Margie, and then items 1 and 2 under now therefore be it resolved, those, or sorry, the final whereas clause needs to be tidied up too. And that just makes me wonder if those are enough items that we should take 2534 back with us, tighten that up, tighten the timelines, bring that back. I would feel fine about that, but I...
Or approve it contingent upon those changes, and then we can ratify them at the next meeting.
I want to hear Commissioner's response to that proposal.
That's a lot of changes, and I'm not comfortable voting on something that requires so much wordsmithing.
And can you just clarify, because we kind of have been talking about both resolutions simultaneously, just to clarify which one you're
If we
referring
can
to?
clean up on 33, on Resolution 30, if we can clean up that number 2 in the last whereas or resolve section, I mean, I think that's good. I mean, I think if we can clean that language up, we can probably do that with a motion. But I'm not sure we can do 34 on the fly.
Where does that put us as a community in respect to making sure payments are made, cash flows adequate, with not approving 34 until the next meeting?
Mr. Fernandez can speak to that, I think.
Well, I can speak to that, but I'm just gonna, this is just my opinion, and the commission can do what it wants, but, we worked out this agreement with the mayor as a 4-year extension. And it's written, the way it's written, it's, primarily the anticipated source of funding is CTP or other funds if needed. I mean, the Redevelopment Commission can cancel the agreement if you want, but the idea here was to link the management agreement with the same timelines as our CCC funding, so that we have certainty as to the kind of funds. We don't get operating money, any kind of operating expenses out of that CCC grant. So the mill's, paying for these things. So I would just, wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that I think that the agreement and the funding that the city's providing is worth it. And if CTP goes away, the city will have an opportunity to evaluate alternative funding sources. And if there aren't any, then you have the ability to terminate the agreement. But I don't support eliminating the last year of the agreement, because the intent here was to, have that carryover year. So the Nets administration, whoever it is, and the mill doesn't get caught in a situation at the very beginning of a new term, having this uncertainty around whether or not we're going to be continuing to do the management of the trades district for the city.
No question in regards to continuing to do it. It's just cleaning up the wording accordingly on Resolution 34 to try to make sure that it's all in place. Does it create a unforeseen problematic situation if that resolution came back in its finality at the next meeting while we go ahead and get the adjustment done on 25, excuse me. Yeah.
Well,
I just want, yeah.
If we're talking about a two-week delay, is that fatal? No. What I was talking about, Randy, was, lopping a year off of the agreement.
I don't think, at least on my opinion, I haven't heard lopping off a year of the agreement.
I was wondering about
Well,
aligning it.
I thought I heard that we were going to align the trades district funding with the previous resolution regarding the CTP application, which only goes through 2027. The trades district partnership goes through 2028.
So if we maintain the timeline as stated in 25-34, my question is, how do we address the concern that commissioners raised related to 25-33, which is not obligating TIF or local funds in the absence of CTP funding, which again, at this moment in time, again, I understand there may be some cash flow, there may be CTP back pay that's coming in later, but that's not in the current resolution. And so it's just trying to honor what we've ironed out already as a contingency for 25-33 and not then backfilling it with an RDC commitment in 25-34. At least, again, that's my take on how the discussion has gone so far. And so that's question remains outstanding, in which sending it back for rewrite would hopefully help address those questions.
I feel personally like we have the right information for our homework assignment, and I think we can meet the needs of the mill's timing and reduce the risk of the RDC. I really think we have what we need for 25-34.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners to address what we've been discussing?
A little cleanup here on 25-34, the third whereas, there's a typo where it's not 3.S million, it should be 3.5 million.
Can you say that one more time? I apologize.
25-34, third whereas, second line, 3.5 million.
Okay. I'm going to just give final call to commissioners for comments or questions on 25-34, and then we'll return to 33. So just asking, and if there are none, we'll turn to public comment. Okay.
The only comment I can make is, at least just one member, I see no problem with the extension. It's just a matter of cleaning up the language.
Sure. And again, it seems like ESD will take the lead on that. Okay, any public comment? I don't see anybody in person. I don't think there's anybody online. So to 25-34, I'm just going to clarify the language. Are we postponing or tabling?
Oh, we're postponing.
Postponing? Okay. So we're going to postpone that. Do we need to vote on that? How does that work?
Yes, you could make a motion to continue it to the next meeting.
Continue, okay.
I didn't hear.
However you would like to make the motion, but the motion could be to direct staff to amend the resolution and bring it back at the next meeting with the edits that were discussed today.
Okay, so heard
So
the
moved.
options for a motion.
So moved, whatever she said.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. We'll do a roll call vote on Resolution 25-34.
Yeah, Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sue Scambler, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McGraby, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. motion is continued unanimously until the next meeting. And so now I will propose that we return to Resolution 25-33. We've had some proposed language to address the questions that we had discussed previously. I just want to confirm that language, again, Ms. Rice had proposed it. I think everybody heard it. Is it possible maybe just to read it one more time now that we are actually discussing this motion and not the other one, or this resolution and not the other one?
Yes, the language would be to amend the number 2 after the now, therefore, whereas statement in 2533 to read some along the lines of commits additional funding from IEDC of $250,000 annually through June 30th, 2027, contingent upon funding being made available through gross sales tax or other funding sources. RDC does not intend to obligate TIF or other local sources through this commitment.
Okay, so with that language, do we have a motion for the Resolution 25-33 as amended?
I'll make a motion.
Moved as amended.
Second.
Second.
Okay, well, popular. So we have firsts and seconds. Can we roll call vote, please?
Randy Casty, yes.
C. Scambaluri, yes.
John West, yes.
Lori McRobbie, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes. Resolution 25-33 passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now at the conclusion of the business part of our meeting. Is there anything else that we need to discuss this evening for additional business? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.